This is St. Teresa of Avila in Potrero Hill, 19th in Connecticut, here in sunny San Francisco, and we are working on the restoration of the crosses on the top. What we're looking at here is they've got our primer all set up. We spent yesterday scraping and cleaning the crosses to remove all of the old debris. They're metal, so that makes it nice so we can get it down to the base and get a nice flat surface to work with. Let's go explore. This cross is getting ready to be restored. It's on a metal base and it's been gilded a couple of times, and I can see that based on some of the underlevel layers that are here. But the first step is going to be to scrape off any loose pieces, get everything so it's firmly stable to the substrate. And we'll clean it. Scour it with a steel wire brush, clean it with some acetone, and then let it sit out to cure, let it dry a little bit. In addition to the crosses on top of the church, we're also going to gild these letters. They may have been gilt before, I'm not sure, I haven't looked at them closely, but that's on today's project also. These letters are made of aluminum, and they were previously gilded, as I now discovered. And the first thing to do is to take off the surface and get it nice and clean. We've done here 180 grit sandpaper, get a nice edge on everything underneath, so that way the gold will look really sharp and crisp. And just burnish sealer will bond to this really nicely, especially if I get it down to the surface. Edge. All the letter forms have been sanded and brought down to their base metal, and the last thing I'm going to do before the primer is take some acetone and just go over the whole letter form again. Helps degrease anything that might be left there. It also takes off the little last bit of glue that might be, adhesive that might be still on the metal, so you can work on a nice raw surface. applying the primer to these letters. I'm using the Dux Burnish Sealer, in this case tinted in that yellow ochre tone. It's a really nice, rich tone there. It's an oil-based product. And in this case, we'll just brush it on. Now, it does take maybe 4 to 8 hours to dry. And in that process, it does self-level to a certain extent, but depending on how thickly you apply it, it may not be perfect. There may be some brush strokes in it, but it does dry to a really nice matte finish, and it's very easy to sand. You can give it a sand with 320 or 400, get it nice and smooth, and then even buff it with a rag or a cotton cloth before you are ready to apply your adhesive. And we're going to let this sit overnight, come back tomorrow and apply our oil-based adhesive. Climbed up the scaffold. Now I'm here at the lower cross. Looks really good. It's a very smooth surface, using the scraping first and really getting down to the metal, cleaning it all with some alcohol and acetone, and then getting it ready for this primer coat. This is the Dux Burnish Sealer. It's the pre-tinted yellow ochre, and it's really a great product. It bonds to pretty much everything. We use it a lot in exterior work and interior stuff. It's an oil-based, solvent-based product, and it bonds particularly well with metal, stone, brick, even plastic. So I've got a nice coat that we rolled out here, and it's pretty opaque. So we're going to get ready to apply our adhesive, 12-hour size. So when I apply the adhesive, I load my brush, and I just kind of work it over the surface. And I really want to pull it out to a nice, thin, even layer, so that the tack will dry up nice and evenly across the whole piece, and I won't have any sagging or gravity pulling it down, so I have heavier bits towards the bottom. So I just really work that. And another nice thing about the primer product is it does dry to a very matte finish, so you'll see, you can really see where, if you have any holidays or not, which are missing areas. You see I've stopped there in that matte over the gloss. And just look at that. Looks pretty good. Definitely want to make sure I get these edges. I like it. Looking good. Received the gold for the crosses on top of this church in San Francisco. Look at that. Christophe Minetti. This is some of the best stuff ever. 23.75 carat rose noble, 23 grams. Typically we sell it about 18 grams, and this is a 23 gram. And I also have a 21 gram, 23.75. Excited to see how this is going to lay out. Our gold leaf. This is a 23.75 carat called Rose Noble, and it's a 21 gram patent leaf. It's great stuff. Let's open that up. This is a book. This has got 25 leaves per book. Take a look at that. Patent Rose Noble, 21 gram for gilding in the wind. And so this is called a pack. It's got 20 books in the pack, 25 leaves per book. That's 500 leaves of gold per pack. So this is an individual book, like I said, 25 leaves. And it's a patent leaf book where each individual square is mounted on a piece of white wax paper. So I can pick up the wax paper without touching the leaf, and then I can lay it onto my surface. Like that. So I can lay it onto the adhesive surface, rub over the backing, and peel it off like a transfer. It's also great because you can cut it into different strips, so you can really manage your leaf much better. You can see how rich that is. That Rose Noble's got a hint of copper in it, so it makes it a little bit more red and kind of a Renaissance or Old World tone. Also got my squirrel hair mops. Here's a 3-inch, really nice mop brush. Got a 3/4 inch too on backup, just in case. Excited to get started. Another bright and sunny day in San Francisco. We just got on site to check how our adhesive is tacked up from yesterday's application. Looking really good. And the best way we tell usually is to get the scaffolding here. Is you can basically take the back of your knuckle and you go lightly over the surface. And if it squeaks, let me see if I can get in there. Can you hear that? That's perfect tack. So this was applied about between 2 and 3 yesterday afternoon. 12-hour slow set size. It's 10:30 a.m. now, and I've got perfect tack, which would be I'm in between my 18th and 20th hour after application. And I would say, based on the climate here, it probably took about 12 to 14 hours for it to get to a nice place for gilding, and then that gives me about another 14 hours. So a couple more hours easily on this, no problem. And let's get started. I'm excited to see all the gold on both crosses. Got a nice reflection off the sun this morning. We can really see that one. So the camera's gonna have a hard time picking it up because it's so bright. So today we'll climb up there and clean the leaf off, let it sit overnight, give it a nice extra 24 hours to cure, and should come up to a nice clean polish. Shouldn't take too long. And then we're going to go approach some letters above the entry. Now it's time to clean the leaf off. We'll do some burnishing or polishing the loose bits. You can see them still here. So yesterday we applied, the 2 days we applied the adhesive, and yesterday we put all the gold on, and then going over the whole surface after we're done to make sure it's really bonded. And then we leave all of the little bits and don't worry about cleaning any of that up the first day. This allows it to get a nice extra 24 hours or so of curing time for the adhesive, and hardens up quite a bit. I'm going to take my 3-inch flat squirrel mop brush, really soft and nice. I'm just going to begin to remove those skewings. All the skewings are referred to as the loose bits of leaf that are left over after gilding. Sometimes you can save them. Just gently go over the seam lines. Not going to be too aggressive. I'll do the whole thing once and then come back and do it again. ready to apply the adhesive size to these letters. They've been sitting overnight with the burner sealer on it, and we're going to use this Lefranc Charbonnel 12-hour slow set size, which is an oil-based adhesive. Very nice product. Looks kind of like an oil-based varnish. Essentially, just gonna brush it on here, and then I'll pull it out to a nice even thin finish. One thing that's nice about this product, working with the Dux burner sealer first, is that dries to a dead matte finish. So when I'm applying my adhesive, I can really see the difference of where I've applied and where I haven't, which you can see here. So it helps prevent making any holidays. So once I'm done, I'll go down and look around the letter form and just make sure it's even, consistent shine. And then I know I've got no dry spots. And then we'll let it sit for overnight, like we did on the other crosses on this church. So it's about 2 p.m. now. We'll come in tomorrow around 10 a.m. and it should have perfect tack for a couple hours. Come in to test the tack the next morning. It's from yesterday, so it's going to be about 15 hours or so. I'm going to come up and just go right back of my knuckle very gently, so if I can hear that. And what you do is you want to listen for a squeak. You can hear it there. That tells me it's at perfect tack. I would expect to have about 5 hours to work with this. So we started gilding some of them, and I'm going to do it in pieces. The best way to do that is just to go ahead and cut up the book. And the book is pretty straightforward to cut. Normally you'll take it and you'll just cut towards the spine. You'll hold it firmly and cut towards the spine, and then it usually cuts pretty cleanly. And then you can just kind of ripple the edge a little bit to loosen it up where the cut mark was, like that. Okay. And then a couple different sizes. So this is the patent leaf, 23.75 carat. Each leaf is mounted on the wax paper, and it's pretty firm, as you can see. And I'm going to go ahead and just lay that on the flat here very carefully. I'm going to do this one-handed. I'm just going to press over the whole surface. Got a few cracks in there, not to worry. All right. Just fold it over nicely, and then you can see through the paper, like right there, for example. You can see where the cracks are, or where there might be holidays, so it's very easy to go back in and touch that after. So the idea is to go ahead and I have a slightly wider strip that'll do all the large flats first, right? And then I'll cut into smaller strips and I'll start filling in around the rest of it, like so. Make sure I get to the top. I'll do that last, and the bottoms to get those edges. You'll see from down below. And then we'll let it cure. I'll go over the whole thing one last time with a piece of tissue paper, rubbing down the leaf to make sure it's firmly adhered, and then we'll usually let it sit a day. Come back the next day with a soft brush and clean off all the excess. That gives a little time for that adhesive underneath to cure out a little bit longer, and it gives your leaf a little bit more brilliance. If you go in too soon, you might risk dulling or softening the leaf surface and losing some of your shine. I finished with all the gilding, cut in all the recesses and corners. And before I take a brush to this to get rid of the skewings, I like to take a piece of the tissue paper that separates the leaves in the book, and I'll start in the beginning and I'll lay it on, and I'm going to just go over every surface with my finger, just not letting the paper slide. And what that does is it really ensures that the leaf is really well pressed onto the surface, no little air bubbles. I'll go over every little edge square on the piece. Like that. It's also helpful because you can see if there's any little cracks or holidays. You'll see it right through the paper, and you can touch it up as you're going so you don't have to come back on another day and try to do any touch-ups. You really want to try to avoid that if at all possible. So I'll just finish these up. Gilding is finished, and I've gone over each side of form with a piece of paper, rubbing over the paper without letting the paper slide and really pushing that leaf onto the surface. Then with the 12-hour size, I like to let it wait another 24 hours before I come back and clean off all the little loose bits, which we call skewings. And so these things that you see flopping around, I like to let it sit to cure out a little bit longer just so it's not too soft and that gold gets a nice shine to it. So I'll take my squirrel mop brush. Just gently work over the whole surface, getting behind it a little bit, and just getting rid of all the last bits of gold. And then over time, it'll get harder. It really takes about a month for the slow set size to cure out 100%. So after that time, it just gets harder and harder, and should last a good 30-40 years, no problem. I'm sure the neighbors getting little pieces of 23.75 karat gold floating by their windows. It's probably kind of fun.